Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock. Let's go over what has happened to the stock. An absolutely pretty wild day in the market today. Well, not really the market, more like pretty wild day for Tesla stock specifically today. So I'll go over my thoughts, what I personally believe, etc, etc, etc. And yeah, as usual, if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor, and of course, if you do enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, etc., well, I do share my thoughts with my members every single day the market is open, including on these kind of painful days as well. So definitely check it out for just $3 a month. That link is down below in the description of the video. Or for $5 a month, you get access to everything in the first tier. So Tesla, sometimes other stocks, plus NVIDIA daily updates as well. But obviously my main focus now is on Tesla. Last week it was on NVIDIA. Funny how it switches that quickly. But yeah, let's talk about it. So Tesla with a pretty brutal day, down 6.5%, closing just shy, we'll say $330 per share with CPI tomorrow. So, and PPI Thursday. So yeah, we're in a peculiar position. And where do I even start with this one? To be completely honest with you, let me think. One thing I think I'll start with is this. So my someone that I follow on Twitter, X, whatever, Mo, he's a good trader, right? He's a phenomenal trader. He's been doing this like much longer than I have, and he's talking about essentially, you can see here the GAN 3 bar swings, which essentially is saying that 17 bars completes tomorrow. And you can see in these examples here on Tesla, when it's had these kind of corrections, if you will, it has pretty much more or less bottomed on the 17th bar, which is of course CPI day tomorrow, which coincidentally enough could be that reason, right? So just interesting to point out. And he's also pointing out over here, you can see circled, actually my camera might be blocking it, my camera's blocking it. Actually no, it's not. You can just barely see here on the circle right to the side of my camera. He has the 5-period RSI. This is actually where I got the 5-period RSI from. It was from him. And you can see it's pretty much at the same levels that it's bottom. So pretty nice kind of factors lining up that previously lined up to showcase bottoms, right? At the very least, short-term bottoms, right? Maybe it's not an overall bottom, but at the very least a short-term bottom for at least a relief rally, right? Nice little coincidental signs essentially showing up over here. So let's see if tomorrow happens to be that or not. Now, going into my specific technical analysis, I mean, obviously some of it is similar to his because I got the RSI, for instance, from him, the 5-period RSI. It is scraping the bottom of the barrel. I mean, it's pretty down bad. I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty down there, right? If I just kind of zoom in only to the RSI over here, you can see it's sitting at currently on the 5-period daily RSI. It's sitting at just under 11, right? These are it's actually the lowest it's been since Elon was selling shares. I think these ones down here was when Elon was selling those shares way back when, if I'm not mistaken. But it's technically speaking, on a short-term basis, it is at extremely like oversold levels, right? Like it's like pretty extreme levels. Now, as if that wasn't enough, obviously we have the bands, the Bollinger Bands, right? Which, I mean, you can't even see it. That's how bad it is, right? You can't even see it because the bar is just covering the bottom part of the Bollinger Band. But usually when things get this extreme and the Bollinger Bands are not as effective because they're more simple, right? Bollinger Bands, a little bit on the more simple end. For most cases, it's perfectly fine. But sometimes when you get into these more extreme, I guess, situations, I pull out these bands here, right? These bands show a little bit more to them, right? There's a bit more information, if you will, behind these bands here. And what these bands show is this. So if I zoom out, for instance, right, you can see when I zoom out on the daily chart on Tesla stock, anytime a Mag 7 stock even gets to the second tier of oversold, right? So in case you're not aware how these bands work, or how at least I use them, obviously anything in between over here, I'm going to remove the other indicators so there's less confusion, just in case. I just want to make sure you guys are seeing pretty much what we need to be seeing, right? So anytime we're essentially in the middle between the two bands, that's neutral, right? Anything above is overbought and anything below is oversold. Then you can see there's 3 like levels, right? There's this one here, there's this one here, and there's this one here, like the 3 lines. There's the 2 yellows and a red. So it's like the first tier, second tier, and third tier. Usually for a Mag 7 stock, even being around the second tier, like for instance, let's use Google as an example, which it pretty much is more or less right now at the second tier of oversold, you can see, it's a usually pretty damn good time, right? You're usually getting a damn good opportunity, right? And if it ever reaches the oversold territory to the very end of it, so essentially the third tier on a Mag 7 stock, you can see pretty crucial levels, right? Pretty, more often than not, obviously nothing is perfect, and I'll go over what could potentially falter Tesla here. It's usually, you're usually getting a quote unquote good discount. Same with Tesla, right? Let's use Tesla as an example. So obviously we haven't touched it in a while. But here, for instance, this was back when we had, I think, yeah, we had that earnings bottom, and then we had that massive gap up, and then Trump won, and we, obviously went even higher. You can see we were at the second tier and even flirting with touching the third tier, like the bottom tier of the oversold bands. And what did that end up being? Well, obviously a pretty substantial bottom. Let's take a look at another example here, right? Tesla selling off aggressively, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And what did it do? It touched the bottom tier of the bands as well. And what did that end up being? It ended up being, in this case, a pretty decent bottom in the stock, right? Let's use some more examples, right? Again, it's not always perfect. It's not always perfect, but you can see here, this was back when Elon was selling these ones here. So this is the example. Actually, no, sorry, this was when Elon was selling this. I think it was this one. Yeah, this was 100. Yeah, this was when Elon was selling. This was. So again, it's not perfect, right? Obviously, sometimes, you'll have instances where it even hugs the bottom end. But again, this whole period right here, like this whole period was during the Elon selling for Twitter saga. So, this one is a bit of an exception because there was just substantial pressure, not only from him selling, but just negative sentiment. So keep that in mind, right? But even then, whenever it touched, at the very least, it slowed the bleeding after a little bit, and then ended up getting a bit of a reversion to the mean, essentially, right? So the point I'm trying to make here, right? Same thing here, right? Same thing here. The point I'm just trying to make is the fact that these bands, same thing here. You can see, look at this massive drop off, and then look at this pretty respectable bounce, right? Now, granted, it wasn't the V bottom, obviously. Ultimately, we still went lower, but nonetheless, it led into a pretty significant bounce. So the point I'm just trying to make is this, right? Same thing here. We're pretty much there, right? The stock is pretty much there, maybe it goes a little bit lower, but it's pretty much at those like extreme levels now. Like, it's not even just oversold, it's arguably extremely oversold, right? The stock has been facing insane pressure, right? Apparently I wasn't bearish enough back when I was still bearish up here, and I was talking about how I want to see that weekly mean reversion, which again, we're pretty much at right now. Apparently I wasn't bearish enough. So again, the point I'm just trying to make is this, right? You'll never time bottoms, you'll never perfectly time tops, you'll never perfectly time these things, right? That just doesn't happen. And if you know how to do it, hey, let me know. I'd love to know. But the point I'm just trying to make is the fact that in terms of a risk versus reward scenario, when the stock, like Tesla stock or like any Max 7 stock ultimately, but Tesla of course being one of them, is at these levels, the RSI is literally scraping the bottom of the barrel. The stochastic obviously still pointing straight down, but nonetheless also at pretty extreme levels of being oversold. And even the weekly on my 5-period RSI, keep in mind, is also entering oversold territories already. We are getting into pretty interesting situations here, right? So the point I'm just trying to make overall is the fact that yes, there's massive volatility, but strictly off technicals, we should be, and this, it feels like I'm talking kind of what I did with NVIDIA back here just not that long ago, honestly. Same idea with NVIDIA. Look what happened, right? We should be closer to a bottom than not. At the very least, a short-term bottom. I'm not necessarily calling this the bottom. It could be. It absolutely could be. You never know for sure. But at the very least, a short-term bottom into, some relief rally moving into as early as tomorrow, moving into the next, few days, maybe even to the next, week or so, right? Now, where would this relief rally take us, right? Well, the first relief rally level I would expect is ultimately, honestly, I think the best case scenario is pretty much back up to about the 370s or to retest this trend line. Let's say it takes about a week or so, right? Let's say it takes until, closer to end of next week, which will be around the 20th, right? Yeah, pretty much lines up almost to perfection, which will be closer to about $380 per share. That would be that kind of relief rally from here. And that's just the very basic way. I mean, right now, in terms of levels, it's difficult, right? Because, Tesla, it's just kind of snapping through many, many levels, but this is a pivot point that it did kind of stop at. Another pretty important thing that it did potentially do that could be important to understand is the fact that if we take the Fibonacci, so let me go ahead and remove this for now. If we take the Fibonacci's, right? So we go from this Fibonacci's, and this is the one I'm not sure about, right? So you either take the swing low from all the way down here, which was that pre-earnings bottom that we had, right? Let me go ahead and bring it up here. You take the Fibonacci, and you can see we're very close to that 618, right? The 618 sitting at about 318, and today's low was not that far from it, right? But today's low was at 325, right? So like literally $5 away from that Fibonacci. However, if you mark the bottom and the kind of like the swing bottom, if you will, instead from here, which was essentially right before that presidential election Trump victory, and we had that massive rally, of course, we're pretty much around it, right? 334. We obviously are slightly down below it, but again, these Fibonacci's aren't perfect. You're not gonna perfectly touch it to the decimal and bam, you bounce from there. The point is close around that area, right? Whether it's that pivot point from before, or rather that swing low from before, or the one that I'm showing you right now. The point is the fact that it's close. very close to those as well, which is a pretty damn good retracement as well for Tesla stock. So let's see, right? Let's see how this plays out. I mean, this is difficult. And like I said, the one thing that can ruin things, right? If there's one thing that can ruin these indicators from signaling the fact that, we should be pretty much at the bottom here, or, damn close, at the very least for a short-term bounce. The only thing that can completely, destroy that and ruin that kind of thesis is Elon selling. That's the big question mark right now. Is Elon selling? Because, if you look at, the 5 minute or even the 1 minute candles, just for, demonstrational purposes, I guess, if you will. I'll remove this indicator. On these smaller time frames, it's kind of obnoxious. You can see pretty much every single time Tesla had anytime it tried to get a bounce, you can see it constantly got followed up with pretty relentless selling pressure throughout the day on spikes of red candles. You can see the volume spikes on all these, candles that are, red essentially, right? So it is kind of begging the question, like, is he selling for the OpenAI thing that came out not that long ago? Like, is that something, right? Is that a concern? Is that going to be putting pressure on the stock? We don't know, right? I'm not saying he 100% is, but it's pretty unusual just how much pressure the stock was facing today. Like, I understand having a bad day, but this felt like abnormally bad in a certain sense, right? So let's see how that plays out. I mean, we will see in I think if he sold yesterday, we should know, I think, tomorrow, latest Thursday. And if he sold today, we should know Thursday, latest Friday. So we should find out this week. I'm very much hoping, obviously, he didn't, but we should find out this week. So let's see how that plays out. The 15-minute did print a beautiful double looking hammer candle. Obviously, we're a little bit down pre-market, but that's usually noise. So we'll see how this ends up actually playing out. The 15-minute, you can see here near the bottom of the day, pretty much printed double hammer candles, which is pretty damn good. Arguably a bullish engulfing candle as well here as well. So bit of a bullish divergence on the 15-minute time frame. You can see here as we made lower lows, still technically speaking, right? We are starting to see those higher lows on the RSI. Probably even seeing that on the 1 hour. Yeah, even seeing that on the 1 hour time frame as well. As we did still go lower and lower and lower. We did end up finally printing a bit of a bullish divergence on the RSI as well, despite us, of course, still making technically those lower lows. So, we're starting to see some of the, at least very least, short-term bottoming signals here, and again, as long as CPI doesn't completely ruin everything, I do expect Tesla to get at least some relief rally, at the very least back up into the 340s. I'd be surprised if we don't see it at the very least back into the 340s, like, maybe mid 340s, something like that. But if this truly ends up being at the very least, a decent bottom for the, next week or so, an overall rally back up to about 370s, potentially tagging 380, which would roughly be that trend line. Let's say sometime by the end of next week would be that other target as well. Now, to the downside, let's say it, we're not done yet. Let's say, I don't know, maybe Elon is selling, or maybe there is more pressure, or, whatever. Let's say the stock just is not done selling off because ultimately it's not actually showing any bottom signals. We're just at a level where, it's pretty intense, and more often than not, when a stock, especially a Max 7 stock, usually small caps are different, of course, but a Max 7 stock, like a big stock, like a massive company like Tesla, NVIDIA, Google, any of those, right? Any of those bad boys, whenever they get to the third tier of oversold with the RSI pretty much scraping the bottom of the barrel, it's usually painful, but more often than not, obviously nothing is perfect, it's usually an opportunity. Not financial advice, just my opinion. So let's see how it plays out. But again, if we do go lower, right? If we do end up coming lower, the first level will be about the 320, which would be that gap fill. That'll be the first level I'll look for. But if I bring out the moving averages here, the 200 EMA is sitting at about $300 per share, and below that, I think the worst case scenario, if things really, if shit really hits the fan, essentially, would be closer to about this kind of 280, which would be finally getting that actual retest of this massive breakout that, remember I was saying before, it would be kind of weird if we don't at some point retest that. Well, this would be that. So let's see. This to me is like the worst case scenario though. Like again, 280-ish, give or take, of course, like $10, $15, of course, maybe 270, something like that, around 280. Is the worst case. But again, the thing with this is I would find it extremely hard to believe that we would go straight down to it on the daily time frame, just based on how it's looking. The only thing that can make us go, in my opinion, of course, that can make us go straight down to that 280 level, like let's just say pretty much straight from here with essentially no bounce in between, is if he is indeed selling. That's the only kind of pressure I can see that can put Tesla stock down to those levels that quickly, that aggressively. So let's see. I mean, let's see how it plays out, right, ultimately. But again, when I see a stock at these kind of levels, as long as Elon's not selling, which, cross your fingers, these should be opportunities, and this is where you really start looking to go shopping, right? Again, not financial advice, just my opinion, on any major stock, like mega cap, like any mega cap, any max 7, etc., etc., etc. More often than not, those are opportunities. Now, the very final thing, the video is getting long, but the very final thing I want to mention, it's a pretty wild day to be fair, is this, right? So the price movement that we're kind of getting recently, the last few weeks or so, it seems very similar to back here when we were in July and August of 2023. Why do I say that, right? The reason I say that is because when Tesla stock, you can see it also kind of, had this nice little recovery, came back, retested the market bias, and then moved up even higher. Same idea, kind of recovered, came back, retested the market bias or mean reversion, and then had to move up. And both of these move ups led into Tesla pretty much getting extremely oversold on the weekly. Remember, you can even go back to these videos when we were still trading at around 450s, and I'm like, guys, if you're buying at 460 on Tesla stock because everyone is screaming for 600, it's not often that the stock, like Tesla stock, gets into extreme overbought conditions like this, where again, it was surpassing the red line, right? And I don't know, hopefully people listen. I'm just saying, you don't buy at these levels, guys. I'm just saying, I said that back then, and I'm saying it right now, just to say, hey, I was right. But going back to this example, the reason I'm bringing this up is because they both essentially went up into extreme levels of being overbought, right? And then what did they do after? They both had multi-week decline right into the market bias / the mean reversion, right into the market bias / mean reversion. RSI peaking its head into oversold, RSI peaking its head into oversold, again on my 5-period RSI. And as if that wasn't enough, the stochastic looks the exactly the same in both instances as well. So honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if we get this little bit of a bounce, similar bounce, and this would essentially be that bounce back up to about 380, right? Similar bounce like this that would next form here for the next, I don't know, week, 2 weeks, I don't know, right? But something similar to that. And that's kind of what I'm expecting right now. So let's see. Again, literally the only thing that would throw a wrench in this plan and this thesis and this theory, etc., is if Elon is selling for OpenAI. That's the only concern, right? As long as that's not the case, I'm pretty confident about this. If it is, well, throw all technicals out the window. They pretty much don't matter anymore. And we just, at that point, are at the mercy of Elon. So let's see how it plays out. Let's see if we get any news about it. I hope not. That would be disappointing. And hopefully we don't. I think that'll be a massive relief on the stock as well. But yeah, long video, but hey, it is what it is. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.